What's up, guys? Welcome back to the WRPF podcast. I'm your host, Alex Uslar. This week's episode, I'm super excited to sit down right now with my friend, Leonetta Richardson. All right. Absolutely crazy. You guys know whenever I do these interviews, most of the time, whether they're athletes, with the last couple meet directors, I haven't done this as much, but always with the athletes, I open up people's open powerlifting page, right? And holy crap, Leo. Like, what? Like, guys, I've had some OGs in here. You are the number one OG that we've had on this podcast. I am so excited to hear your story, to hear really the evolution of powerlifting through your lens. Just to let you guys know, spoiler alert, just on open powerlifting, I don't know if it dates from before this, your first recorded competition is 2001, right?
Yes. My
That
first
is
competition was actually an unsanctioned meet, though.
that insane. Leonetta, thank you for hopping on. Welcome to the show. I'm super excited to have you on.
Thank you, Alex. Like I told you earlier before we started, don't threaten me with a good time. I love talking about powerlifting, so I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
And it shows for someone who's been in it over 20 years, you have to love it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like me, I've been in it just about 10 years now, and the growth has been absolutely insane. So it's going to be exciting to kind of hear your lens, because I feel like powerlifting was kind of the same for a long period of time, if I was just to assume, before massive shifts in evolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's take it way back. So your first recorded competition, like you said, 2001. What was your first intro to powerlifting, and even being a female who works out in that time, practically in the 90s, right? What were you doing before powerlifting? Because your first competition, 24, what was going on before that?
I actually got started in weightlifting back in high school. I threw shot put and discus my junior and senior year. A part of the training and conditioning for that is strength training. So I had some coaches that ran us through basic training, squat, bench, deadlift. And I'm 5'2" at the time and 150 pounds. There is no way I'm going to college for throwing. Those women.
Not to interject, was it all in Hawaii? Is that where you're born and raised?
Everything was in Hawaii. I was born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii. Yes.
Okay.
So this was, I graduated high school in 1995. And then so I got the weightlifting training from, like I said, for track and field. And then I went away to college, also on another island, the University of Hawaii at Hilo. It's called the Big Island. So I went to college there. And then I started working out in the weight room. I just became more interested in weightlifting. I graduated in 1999 and then moved back home to Honolulu. And that's where I met my first coach, Larry Akiyama. He is an old-timer Waikiki Beach Boys canoe captain, was a part of the 70s and 80s. I mean, I have Hawaii record breaker VHS tapes where I'm watching the legends like Lamar Gant, Fred Hatfield, I think most notably, where he squatted 1,000 pounds and they moved the jacks, so essentially creating a monolift. That happened to Hawaii, so we have a long legacy of great meets, great lifters, legends from the island, legends who came to compete on the island. So that was kind of my start. So I'm stepping foot into like this amazing time in lifting where it's like kind of like the passing of the guard, the 70s, 80s, 90s, to where I came in the 2000s. So I still know the history 20 years behind me because I had a coach from that era.
Now, let me ask you, in high school, mid 90s, I feel like, I don't know how it was outside of Hawaii, but Hawaiians are known for just being strong, right? Strong people in so many ways, physically, mentally. So I'm guessing in the Hawaiian culture, lifting was supported even for females. Because I mean, you think back in the 90s, when you look at other areas, women aren't exercising, women aren't lifting weights as much. So what was that like? Was it throughout all the sports there that it was very common, male, female, anyone to be lifting weights? Or did it happen to be kind of in your school, your universities, or it's just commonly done?
I came up in the era of Title IX for women's sports. So, women, we were starting to have women's wrestling, women's judo, so there's women were equally participating, if you will, in these sports. And really it's, my high school coach is really a testament to them. They didn't see any different. As long as you were working hard, male or female, you were supported. I remember doing a high school track and field meet, and I was wearing like just these old school heavy shoes, non-athletic, like British Knights. and I remember wanting these throwing shoes. I don't know if you remember like East Bay magazine, you could get like all these athletic wear and shoes. And he said, if you break the record at this local track meet, I'll get you throwing shoes. So there was this early incentive for this push, even in women's athletics. And I wasn't even aware of it at the time. I am fully aware of it now. So I just came in at a good time where I had really good mentors like Anthony Harris. He is a powerlifting legend on the USAPL IPF side. So I really come from this like legacy and this background of just like really great mentors in the sport that really got us going quickly at a time where information was very hard to find.
Completely different, right? Because most of the people I talk to have gotten into sport, in the last 5, 10, 12 years where it was the information age. We had YouTube, we had social media beginning to rise, which really played a huge factor into the big boom of powerlifting. But you just happen to be somewhere where it was kind of ingrained in the culture. It was very common. Like you said, Hawaii had a lot of powerlifting roots that ran deep. So, you were fortunate, besides women's sports being on an equal playing field, you probably had coaches who were familiar with it. And even at the time, you might not have known formally what powerlifting was till a little bit later on. They probably knew because of all the legends that kind of were around them as well.
Yeah, so I just got to quit. Like I had a wonderful opportunity at the time and I took it running. And, myself and my team Mana in Hawaii, like we started competing in the early 2000s together. And really as a team collectively just went out and traveled everywhere. We have IPF world team members, like I said, IPF master champions, all-time world record holders have come through the ranks in the time that have been a part of the sport in the state. When I first came on, it was all single ply, of course. And I was ecstatic to bench 225. This is back in 2021. Paula Suzuki at the time in Hawaii, IFBB pro, also a power lifter at the time, she benched 402. So I'm like, this is amazing. Like for me, it's always been like, the standard of lifting surrounding me has always been high. And I've always been so grateful for that. Like in order for me to be the first in benching in multiply or single ply in the state, I have to bench 500.
And
that's high.
It's so special because if you look at somewhere, the Midwest, California, whatever it is, probably 20, 25 years ago, people were traveling 3, 4, 5 hours. They were having to catch a flight to get to a different area of their state. But that kind of also goes into the smallness and the specialness of the community, right? That probably everyone who's in that community and that culture know each other. So what was that like? Let's go right to that early stages of when you met your first coach, right? Like you said, right away, you're being tons of wealth of knowledge is being passed to you, information, whether it's old VHSs, magazines, etc. Were there already actual powerlifting gyms, frequent competitions there on the island that right away you knew about lifting because you were doing that before, but now it's boom, straight into it right away?
And I think powerlifting gyms really kind of didn't become a thing to probably like, I want to say 2008, 10 era. So Hawaii was, we didn't have any specific gyms, not in my era. Before there was a gym, Brett's Gym, and there's a lot of big local lifters came up to the ranks to that gym. My time, there was a gym called The Gym. It was owned by this guy named Mike Sapp, and it was a great blend. It would still be a great gym today, the concept of it, a great blend of bodybuilding and powerlifting, because at some point in time, they were kind of one and the same, like, so it had really just a perfect blend. So, and then he ended up selling the gym to Gold's Gym, and then they ended up losing their parking space. So you could kind of see this was going away. So my team, Mono Barbell, there was 5 of us: Darren, Justin, John, and Donna Barang. There was the 5 of us, and we kind of built Mono Barbell just basically out of a necessity for a place to train. We were taking specialty barbells, a bucket of chains, and all these other kinds of equipment into a commercial gym. Needless to say, we were asked to leave at some point. And you get it now, it just doesn't fit for their business.
Right.
It didn't fit for what we needed at the time. So we had to create this gym. So it kind of became like, it wasn't really meant to be a business. We just needed a place to train.
And it's funny is to speak on something you said, that powerlifting and bodybuilding was kind of one and the same at a certain period of time. And I feel like not a lot of younger people know that or fully understand that, because now they're like, oh yeah, I'm a power builder, but they really they compete in powerlifting and they do accessory movements. But if we look at even Arnold, right? We look at Ronnie Coleman, we look at all these guys who they were bodybuilders through and through. But they trained the compound lifts, right? There was machines, there was isolation stuff also, but they trained the compound lifts. And I feel like for a lot of them, it was like you're in your off season, you're training the powerlifting, and you're a competitor through and through. You're not competing in a bodybuilding show, then they jump into powerlifting competitions. Is that kind of what it was like?
Yeah, like I said, Paula Suzuki, the first woman to bench 400 in Hawaii, was also an IFBB pro, and we see this more frequently now. Fast forward to today, we see a lot of duality in athletes. Hunter Henderson, obviously now getting ready for a show. Susan, of course, at her time was on the come up. Eva Dunbar at the time as well, early on in like that 2015 range. So so you kind of just see this, and I'm really grateful to have come into the sport at the time, because I see these generational changes, these eras and these dynasties of champions and lifters, rise and fall of federations, and kind of changing throughout these 20 years, so the sport is consistently evolving.
Yeah. So take me through, because ultimately you're going to be able to show us a perspective that I haven't been able to talk to anyone about. Take me through the years of 2001, from that first competition to 2011, right? Through your open powerlifting, all it is single ply and multi in there. I don't know if it was actually multiply or what that was. Explain to me how it went from being a high school athlete competing, doing weightlifting, squatting, benching, and deadlifting, to meeting your first powerlifting coach, finding out about single ply, putting on suits, and then ultimately competing in that and only that for 10 years.
Yeah, at the time, like I said, we came up through the ranks very in a very traditional manner, if you will. You compete at the state championships, you qualify for nationals, you go to worlds. This was on the USAPL side. Actually, I first started in Oahu. Hawaii is a big bench press state. At one time, probably arguably holding some of the best single ply benchers in the world in the early 2000s, and before that. So just kind of sticking with single ply, because even though in the US single ply is kind of dwindled down, it's still big on the European side, so you always had competition there. So we kind of grew up in that traditional style. And then you kind of see like the Raw Unity, right? 2008. I was still staying on the single ply side, but Raw Unity had started in 2008, lasted 8 years, up into 2016. And then you can see the first Raw Unity, there was kind of like a transfer from some of the multiply or geared lifters kind of switching over, to Raw. Sam Bird might be one of the most notable ones. Big equipped squatter, also squatted very well, doing raw. So, but there was still, like I said, it just depended which side you were on. If you were in the USAPL, you were going the IPF route. So you were nationals, worlds, that's it. And you
And it
did
was
that
single
2
ply.
meets every year.
Yeah.
And it was all single ply. You know, I think the IPF didn't introduce classic roads into 2012, and that started Kimberly Walford's era of 11 world championships, something like that. So
wow, I didn't know that fact of that it was in the USAPL, in the IPF, what everyone gravitates towards now who wants to compete on a world level. It was strictly single ply all the way till 2012, even though that is, again, kind of when raw powerlifting on the untested side of things started exploding. But also there, that's where it kind of built its foundation of raw. So my question for you is, you personally, how much raw were you training? Or it was really kind of your people were single ply, that's what you guys knew, that was the trajectory, that was the old school ways. And what do you think sparked the interest for raw to start becoming a thing?
I think without a doubt, the entry for raw, is a lot more attainable. And that's what we want to do, right? Even at the state level, we want to eliminate the barrier for entry. We want to make it as low as possible to get the most people in the sport. And the reality is of it, single ply was just not going to be able to do that because of the support that you needed to be able to perform these lifts, spotting and loading, helping you put on the gear. I could never put my own bench press shirt, and I still can't. I compete single ply still every now and then. So you're going to always need the support, So I think raw came on it. I mean, there's this cosmic thing that kind of happened, right? So it was like the boom of raw. It was social media. CrossFit also did help at that time. So we got to see there was kind of this change, and there was also the changing of the guard too. The USPF had a long legacy in the sport. All the greats competed in the USPF, and that at the time they kind of fell off in 2010, and it gave rise to another federation at that time. The USPA was born, and therefore, and then a lot of lifters who competed in the USPF who were not interested in competing in the USAPL, IPF, kind of went that way. And so, so there is this kind of big shift and change in that time frame. And like I said, social media and the access to it. Now you see even 24 Fitness, what they got. They have AstroTurf now, bumper plates. You can drop the bar now. You can use chalk. We started in a 24 Fitness back in 2000 in single ply gear. I mean, we stood out like a sore thumb. We were eventually just not welcomed, So now to even see that shift, even in commercial gym. I mean, I see power lifters in Crunch Gym, $9.99 membership, and you can train powerlifting there. So there's access now.
Right.
This is the big rise of our sport, is the accessibility to it is wide open right now.
100%. So looking at those years, right? Competing. I mean, like I said, guys, if you're listening, go look at this open powerlifting history. There is no gaps. This was your life. You were eating it, you were breathing it, you were living it, right?
Yes.
So at what point does it start becoming, or even through that, did it become kind of a career? Were you coaching? What did coaching look like? And when did your involvement on a federation, helping with actual events, etc., come into play?
I never had a great interest for coaching, but I always knew, like, early on, because essentially, like I said, Mana Barbell was built out of a need for our team to train. And then eventually, just looking around, we're like, we need more meets in the island. We need more full power meets, So that was actually created out of necessity too. So from 2000 to 2009, myself and my team, we just trained, we competed, we traveled everywhere. I've competed in the overseas in Austria at the WRPF Worlds a while back. So like, we just wanted to go everywhere we possibly could, go to the best meets we could. And a lot of times, to see the lifters you wanted to see, you had to be at the meet. So you really wanted to go to nationals and qualify because you wanted to see, your lifter who you were a fan of. So you really tried to do that. There's no social media, right? Only magazines and VHS tapes at the time. So, and forums. Forums were also huge. But so it just was built out of that. So for 9 or 10 years, we just kind of learned as much as we could, met as much people as we could, have a lot of friends on the mainland at the time. And then we just said, we're either going to be a part of the problem or part of the solution. And we said, we're going to run a meet. we ran our first meet in April of 2009. The year prior to that, Darren and I, who was my training partner at the time and eventually became a co-meet directors together, we flew to California just to take our referee practical the year before.
Wow.
There was nobody on island to give us a practical or exam or anything. So, and that's how I even got a lot of my refereeing time in the chair. As a female and Darren as a lightweight male, we usually typically always competed on day one and then we refereed on day two. And that's how we got a lot of chair time and moved up to the ranks from state, national to international referee. So everything that had to happen came as a price because of the distance of where our state is, logistically located, but we never really used that as an excuse. And we just kept trying to gather and gain more information. So really, we're lifters, and then we just had to become administrators and meet directors just based out of a need for meets on the island.
Right. So 2009, 15 years ago. So again, jumping around a little bit, Mana Barbell, you spoke a little bit about that being built out of necessity. You said it started as 5 people. So was that a location in somewhere that you guys opened and like it was an actual facility that was open to people? And is that what kind of started growing and then also facilitated that need for the competitions? And when was that?
The gym and the meet directing came almost simultaneously. That came in back in 2009. Kind of like, so we were purchasing equipment, and purchasing equipment for Hawaii comes at an extra cost for the shipping. So sometimes almost as much as the equipment is. So that just came out of a necessity, and the gym was open to everybody, but it was the first of its kind. I remember us having initial talks and we're trying to bring up, like, we don't know nothing. We just know that we need a gym to train for our team because we just can't take 20 people into a commercial gym and train. It wasn't working. So we just kind of were like thinking about it. We're like, okay, we're going to charge $50. And I remember people saying, that's too much. And now gym memberships are over $100, with all the same specialty equipment we had too. But also what came as a necessity is that, we were traveling, like say on the USAPL side, we were going to nationals and worlds, and they've always had a full kit set up in the warm-up room. They've had same style competition racks as on the platform, kilo plates throughout, long, extra large loading charts. They've been doing this for decades, right? So we wanted to get the same kind of equipment. So our athletes, when we went to these meets, we could give the correct rack heights. We've already did our state meet on this type of equipment. So we just kind of wanted to really bring that start to at least we could have equipment that matched all of the meets on the mainland that we're going to do. So that's really what our true reasoning was at the time for doing it.
And it worked, and look at that.
I mean, it's still there today. Mana Barbell, I am no longer a part of it because I moved to California in 2012, 2016. So, but it is still in operation. They're still pumping out world champions out of that gym. It's amazing.
It's seriously such a testament of the people that were behind it, yourself and your other partners, realizing the need, realizing the necessity, but also not half-assing it, right? Doing things balls to the wall, but doing it right. And ultimately that's what built the success and the gym to be able to continue through a time that it wasn't like opening a powerlifting gym today, right? Where so many people are going to go in and walk in through those doors or start running meets today where it's, 100 times what it was, 15 years ago. So You guys open the gym, you guys get everything ready, you guys run that first meet. And then from there, it's how frequent was it? What was it like? And it was just kind of getting the ball rolling. And ultimately, so take me from 2010 to let's say about 2015 when you moved to California. How did you really kind of visualize? We've already talked about it. We've said it, the rise of CrossFit, the rise of this, that, and the other. But how did that feed into your business of the gym and the meet directing? And how much did you really start to see it grow?
Um, I mean, exponentially. Our first meet had 17 lifters, and eventually by the time we had finished, and I'll go back for the middle, but the time we had finished, we were selling out meets over 100 lifters in 10 minutes. So we had this huge growth and a lot of reasons for that growth. Other larger meets popping up, but in between, we ran 2 meets a year. We also had support. We had meet directors running single lift meets, push pull. So we had about 3 or 4 meets throughout the year. But remember, this was a time where we had no online registration and no online membership cards. So you could never get your membership card the night before or while standing in the weigh-in line, because you had to go to Powerlifting USA, fill out your little membership card, mail it in, and I don't know, 3 or 4
That
weeks
is such a
later.
crazy concept. That like it's crazy to think that literally over half of the people who are either listening to this, competing in all of our regular meets, whatever it may be, don't understand that concept, right? Me, I barely understand that concept, but I was aware of it. I never really had to
Right.
do it. But same thing, you'd watch things on TV. There's no going online and placing your order
No,
like that, right? You're
no.
you're filling out an application, you're
Yes.
stuffing some money in an envelope, or you're writing a check and you're mailing it. How
I hope it gets there, yeah, and then you get a card back in the mail, right? So this is the thing, like I just like, you just stay punctual. Like I just have learned to do things early, and that's my style now, It comes well anyway, so back to that time. So paper entries, right? So you always had a postmark date, so, and then even marketing at the time is so insane, you had to build, and this because you're music, right? So you had to print out your posters, right? Go to every supplement store in the city, like ask to pin it up. We have this famous restaurant, Zippy's. It's like serves local food. So we asked them to post it up on their board, just total word of mouth, door to door salesman, like
but it
preaching the
worked,
gospel of
right? Because
powerlifting. Yes,
you knew how to look, you knew where to look, at least for me,
yes,
the music side of things. I
yes.
was excited. I was looking for where those posters are, adding them all up, getting copies of them, keeping an account. I know where all my weekends are going to be. But so
Right.
different, so different.
So back to that. So I would get, so we would have a lifter cap, say 60 lifters, 45, whatever it was, right? But it was paper entries, postmark. So you can't monitor, like how registration shut down now when you reach the threshold. So like a week out, I have 75 paper entries for a 45 lifter meet, right? It's like, it's a good problem to have, right? You got to figure it out. So I remember we did a morning session, because session meets were a thing when I was competing. I came up to the USAPL. So I'm glad we're back to sessions. But anyways, so so I have these 75 lifters. Anyways, we made it work. We ran it at Moanalua High School gym. Yeah, it was a wild time. I love it because I've been able to see it to what it is today. And that's probably kind of why I hung out for so long, because I want to see the evolution of things, So yeah, so early on in 2012, that's when Susan Salazar entered kind of powerlifting. Her first meet was the 2012 Hawaii State Championships, because Hawaii, we have a big military bases throughout the island. She was stationed in the Navy out there. So we met her at that time. She's coming off of her bodybuilding career and kind of wanted to make a change. So she kind of entered there. But even around that time, Alex, we were excited. We had, our whole flight of women at that time, flight A, all women, single ply. Some Raw at this time, because Raw was coming up, as Raw Unity started in 2008. But so it was wild. I'm blown away by it all, honestly.
So really, you hit the nail on the head. That time of 2012, 2013, 2014, the rise of Raw, the rise of social media. Susan, I talked about her on the last podcast with Heidi being such an
Mhm.
influential female figure, which I'm super excited to have her on hopefully very soon as well. Take me through being a part of that, seeing all of that, being involved in her journey, because you'll probably be able to speak to it better than I can, but her accolades and what she did as a female and Raw and in
Mhm.
Raw Raps, whatever it is, was completely uncharted territory, right? Like she was
Yeah.
breaking insane records. Like looking
Mhm.
at even what her now it's dots, but what Wilkes would have been back then, like off
Mhm.
the charts, off the charts.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Susan came at a very special time. She was also a little older in her career, you know, wanted to just kind of branch off from, you know, her bodybuilding career. She's an IFBB pro, switched over. So really, when I met Susan, you know, having been in the sport for so long and just kind of seeing dynasties, you know, the USAPL side with, you know, all those lifters. So when I met Susan, she had everything. You know, at the time, she knew how to eat, she knew how to stay tight. Like she's a bodybuilder, so she knew all the cues. She could activate everything. She was just we just kind of had to change her leverages, kind of teach her how to just train powerlifting. And but she had everything, you know. So she was kind of like at this cusp when everything was changing too. You know, her first all-time world record was the 123 deadlift at the time. She did 429. The record before that was 424, but that was a record set in like the 1980s. Vicky Steenrod had held that record. So it's like, so then I started seeing like these gaps, you know, like those records were now going to pass because the women's powerlifting was going to be on the rise. And you kind of start see trending, you know, like everybody's coming out the woodworks, you know. So, and then, you know, after that, then you see this whole evolution, right? Then you see the Marianas, then you see Stacy Burrs, then you see Steffi. And even at that time, you know, Hawkins was kind of just started out, you know, like 2016, Christy Hawkins. So she was not, you know, the 700 dots lifter she was then. To even see her rise from like the 2017 current till now is just amazing. I think she placed sixth then. And now, now it's like, who's going to pass Christy Hawkins, right?
It's
She's
insane.
the carrot.
It's insane. And like you said, those women with that fantastic base, but also just all then the fresh athletes being exposed to it, being able to experience it. What you guys have heard me talk about so much is just the last 8 to 10 years has been the rise of social media and the massive shift and the massive change. You know, me getting into powerlifting in 2013, starting to coach a lot 2014, 2015. I'll never forget the first time that I met you, right? So I coached an athlete.
Yes.
This is
Albert.
before I worked for Hybrid, before I started getting to actually travel the world for competitions. I was someone who was just at every single local meet in Florida, taking teams from my CrossFit gym, riding that rise of powerlifting off of CrossFit. People who weren't loving just doing all that stuff, they see me in the corner of this, you know, rusty gym, no specialty bars, no kilo plates, nothing, crappy adjustable benches, and just loving powerlifting. And it was really cool getting to watch it grow through that lens. But having never really traveled much except once or twice to USPA Nationals and Worlds,
Mm-hmm.
he had found, he's like, you know, I want to compete somewhere besides just going to Vegas for Nationals because he done Nationals, he's done Worlds. Those were the two main traveling competitions we had gone to. We're like, let's go somewhere cool, Hawaii. Right. And I remember the
Mm-hmm.
meet was already sold out, but somehow he was able to get a spot. And I'm like, hell yeah. You know, like we're going to
Yeah.
go to a Fit Expo in
Right.
Hawaii. And,
Right.
um, and I was like, we're gonna vacation after. We're gonna stay in Hawaii five,
Mhm.
6 days. And
Mhm.
it's so funny. I thought to myself, all right, you know, Hawaii powerlifting. Now, what do I know about Hawaii powerlifting? Nothing, jack shit. I didn't know anything. I'm gonna be like, this is for sure gonna be a lot of people like me and like Albert who want to go vacation in Hawaii. Is that a fit expo? So it's gonna be a bunch of, people flying over from California, people flying over from I don't know what. Put on a Hawaiian shirt. I roll up, and everyone's like, "Who the fuck is this white boy?" It's a bunch of strong ass. Yeah, I had never been to a meet like that. That there were
Right.
so many strong people, and it was all Hawaiians. It was all locals. It was all that community. And I'm just like looking around and just like shocked by it all, right? And then I meet you, and you were hands down the nicest, most warm and welcoming of people that I had been meeting for a couple years now, but I was a younger kid. I was early 20s. I was 22, 23. Not a lot of people took me, as serious back then. And you were so warm, welcoming, and it made it one of the most amazing experiences I had in powerlifting. And after that, it was a huge turning point because 2 months later, I started working for Hybrid and traveling everywhere with Steffi and traveling to all of her meets. But before that, I was just some guy in the corner of a CrossFit gym that had a club.
Right.
I'm very grateful how the experience that you gave, these outsiders and how welcome and warm, and it just showed the passion and the love that you had through and through. And I just wanted to tell that story because it was a fantastic memory, and also just it was so eye-opening for me. It was very cool.
No, I mean, I appreciate that the Hawaii Fit Expo was a huge event for us. It was finally somewhere where we're coming out of, gymnasiums or, school cafeterias where we started, and kind of just being out in the public and having, this higher level meet for our athletes with greater exposure. Because, at the time, expos were really big, right? At one point, expos were huge, to compete in. That was somewhere you could go. And then now there's all this rise of these other, higher level meets. So we were, really special to have been able to offer that, to the lifters. It's just, and we've always had a good time traveling to the mainland and, creating relationships there.
I love it. It was a ton of fun. And it's really true what you say. I remember at that time, the reason why we even chose an expo is like here in Florida, we had the Europa Expo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for Florida powerlifting, it like that was the gold standard. Same, sure, you had that trajectory of nationals, worlds if you wanted to as well, but you don't want to travel, you don't want to fly wherever the hell it is. Getting to go compete in this Europa Expo, Orlando, only 3 hours away. And I remember in 2015, 2016, getting to take teams of like 20 people from a CrossFit gym, all just CrossFitters, normal old people who signed up at a gym just for wanting to get into general shape. And we're like, man, this is a lot. Let me do something simpler, right? And then again, that all ties into how you saw that early growth, which then spun even more growth because people can see it and put their eyes on it and realize this is something they can do. They can compete in this. They can push themselves in it. And the accessibility is so easy, so much easier than having to learn how to climb up a freaking pull-up bar and do a muscle up. You just got to
right. Well, and also, it gives you an amazing opportunity to create the next generation of referees and meet directors, out of Hawaii. I mean, I couldn't be more proud of Kehalani Richardson. As you know, she was one of our earlier referees, came on the scene about 2012, and became a referee. And I mean, she just has risen and has forged her own path, and, also another kid, we had his first meet, one of our meets, we took to an outer island where we put all our equipment on a barge because our state is separated by islands. So we put our equipment on a barge and we send it over to another state, and then now, that was his first meet. He was 17 or 19 at the time. Now he's a state chairman in the state. He owns his own gym. He's thriving. It's like, it's nice to just see this evolution. And then, it makes me happy because there's going to be meets for years to come. So it's a very special role that we play as meet directors, and don't get me wrong, we had to learn all of this. Our first meet, there's no scoring system. We're hand calculating by cards. So I am so thankful for all the people in the early years who are very patient with us as the technology caught up many, many years later. Meets were running way longer than they should, right? We're not like posting awards pictures at 4 o'clock back in the day.
I
We're lucky we're deadlifting.
I experienced that tons. I talked about that on the last episode. Freaking deadlifting at 10 p.m. And
Right.
that's not a session meet. That was not a session meet. That was just a meet that ran straight through.
Right.
It's definitely it's great how far it's come, and like we said, for the importance of sessions, of the ease of watching from a spectator standpoint has grown so much. The excitement behind it has grown so much. Social media being able to back it, finding more better and better venues, from, like you said, being in a school gymnasium to then renting a convention center, which is a huge step, huge an upgrade, very exciting. But then taking it even further, finding places that offer even more of an experience, more comfort. You have meets like the American Pro doing shit none of us ever thought we would see.
No,
That's nuts. It's nuts.
Right. So, and I've always been grateful that there are still these leaders and these meet directors like yourself who are really wanting to take on these challenges, not only logistical challenges, but personality challenges sometimes, so you got to be just a special person and want to do that, and just what I liked, we finally got to come to the Ghost Clash last year, right? In 2013, not 2013, 2023. So, we're there and it's at the Tank Brewery. You got this new, venue. It's super cool. But then, you got international lifters now coming to these meets. I met Alana Aquino there, and her wife. So I'm looking, right? So Susan and I always, the women on our team, I always pride myself on, we can wrap knees, we can put on gear, we can run a mono, we can run a warm-up room. Like, we need to do all these things to spot and load. So I see Alana and her wife, they're in their early 20s, and the wife is wrapping her knees like a professional. And Alana's going out there and taking all these junior all-time world records. And I'm like, these are the kinds of things that have kept me in this sport for so long. Like, just seeing this rise and this change, and I wouldn't be able to see this if meet directors like yourself are not taking this risk and taking these chances, you know what I mean? And offering these prize money and this unique opportunities. So, and I've noticed that in every 5-year gap for me, in almost 25 years, they have been meet directors that have always stepped up for the sport and taken those chances.
You hit the nail on the head. It takes a special kind of person to take on the challenge, to be able to execute it, but then to keep freaking doing it.
Yes.
But when you do it right, and when you can actually sit back and see the bigger picture, that's when you realize it is so worth it, right? It's so worth it to keep going, to keep going at it, to keep doing it, to see how far you can push, how far you can challenge yourself, to challenge everyone else. And ultimately, that's just what leads to that boiling growth that we're seeing before us. The last 4 years, 5 years, call it, right before COVID to now, although we saw so much growth, with the rise of CrossFit, with the rise of social media, it's like social media's already been around. Instagram's been around for over 10 years now.
Right.
The last 3, 4, 5 years of the young juniors, young people just getting involved in it, it makes it so special. Like, again, being someone who took people to meets, ran meets, whatever, the last couple years, the amount of 14, 15, and 16-year-old kids signing up for my meets, competing in my meets, their moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles, all coming out to watch them. They get a little bit older, then they bring their younger sibling into it.
It's
so freaking cool.
Yeah. So, and you realize, like, this is a very important thing that we do. The pressure on any kind of meet director, especially now, where all the visibility and the eyes on it, so you got to make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's, with the amount of eyes and the live stream. But, and like I said, just creating meets, like 2016, the Hawaii Fit Expo, that's when we met Jody Sajor and Mahia Alani Strong from Maui. And they were all in from day one. I mean, this year in November, they're going to celebrate 8 years of having Ho'omana Barbell open on the island of Maui. You're a gym owner. Is it easy to have a gym open for 8 years
Hell no.
anywhere?
Right.
I mean, I am blown away by them. The women that I've gotten to meet, and just just amazing. And just like earlier, I was talking about marketing, right? We're going on, but like looking even marketing, but even the women in marketing, we have Anna with A1 Digital, we have Angelica with Strong Shots, we have Liz with Sly Vision, and these are only three of many, you know. So even as the sport is growing, women are taking up space in all kinds of different areas. And I think that's really what brought up the growth, you know, because at the time that I worked for the USPA, I think our membership alone was 40% women at the time. So
Wow.
I could only, and we have open powerlifting now, so we could just, you know, do a few filters and
Right.
figure out numbers. But so yeah, the growth is there, but the growth is there at every level now. You know,
Okay.
now what the WRPF, we have, you know, all kinds of different meets, regionals now, we have nationals, we have these higher level pro meets, Sergio's meet. Susan did that one last year too. I'm a big fan of Sergio. You know, him and his crew, you're in your crew, just the nicest people, you know. You guys are paying people on time as well. That's a part of it, right? Because that's a part of the service that you're offering these athletes. They've agreed to come to your meet, and you agreed to pay them this if they win. And payments for you and Sergio are going out the day of, you know, in any way you want it. You need a check, you need Venmo, and that is so appreciative. That thing goes a long way. So, you know, we have these good people in place. So, you know, Pete Spence, you know Pete Spence. Did you go
Of
to
course.
Sheffield with Gavin the
I
other
was
year?
able to go to Sheffield. That
Right.
was an experience of the lifetime. And
Okay.
people won't even be able to understand it unless you lived it. People don't understand
Right.
how much on another level that was in every way. And me really
Mhm.
being able to appreciate it as a meet director, you know, that was another level of special.
Right. So, you know, so these things were not here 4 years ago. What, Ghost
No.
Class, you're on number 4, 3?
It's the F3. Yeah.
3. So these meets were not here 4 years ago.
Yep.
So, you know, here we are. So it's amazing. Laura Phelps has, you know, always held the line, you know, for multiply women and a women's only meet. She has a 12-year meet at this point. So, you know, there are people holding the line in different areas of the sport for the next generation to come up. So I'm excited to see what is going to happen, you know, in the next 5 years, you know.
Agreed. And so taking us to present day, you said, you know, a couple years back, you removed yourself from Mana Barbell. You aren't as much of an active meet director anymore. You've been doing it a long time, but you are still so active through and through in the sport. You're still traveling to these meets. You're still judging. You're still coming and coaching and handling Susan. My question for you, outside of a meet director, someone who been meet directing for so long, but even longer than that has been competing. How have, because like I said, me myself, it's easy to feel the love by experiencing all these different areas of growth as a meet director, watching the sport evolve. How have you been able to still keep competing and pushing for so long that there's no gaps in your open powerlifting history? Everything that you've done has been so impressive, but that alone in and of itself is such an accolade right there.
I think it came from just early on in the sport. I knew I wanted to be involved in everything. I knew I could have a greater reach by running meets and being involved. You know, I saw it every time I went to the mainland and did a meet. I mean, there are hundreds of people here in this ballroom that have gathered together for this sport. So I need to meet people. I need to network. So I became involved in everything, and I kind of never just relied on competing because I'm just going, right? I'm reffing or I think. So I kind of really never even thought about it. I did take, you know, and then I'm interested in competing in bench only competitions. So I did not always compete in full power. Sometimes I take a break. I just do bench only, but you know, just the longevity of it, just being around for so long, having good mentors, and now, with all the research that's out there, I think athletes are going longer. Look, Christy Hawkins is 43 years old. Anthony Harris, who's one of, our mentors in Hawaii, at 53 years old at the Arnold, this is raw. He squatted 834. His second attempt was 804, and he opened with 749. This is 52 years old. So, there's just too much evidence that athletes now, because of all the information, are lasting longer. I mean, Tom Brady, I'm not saying powerlifting's on that level, but we're seeing a quarterback in his 40s.
Besides the longevity, besides the body, it's a testament of your love for it.
Yes.
It's so common for people to either get burned out, throw in the towel, retire from competing. Yeah. It's still your career in other ways. It's a true testament of your absolute passion and love for it. That just a couple weeks ago, there you were throwing it all in, doing a full power meet again, crushing it, benching over 300 pounds, over 20 years into the sport. It's fucking amazing to see. It's people like you who've paved the way, who have left an influential footprint in other people's lives and experiences, like myself, like all those people who were under you, who were next to you, who were side by side with you to continue the legacies. And I only hope that I can continue to do the same thing. And thank you. Thank you a ton. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Alex. It's like people just got to keep having conversations about lifting and, and let the market decide. The athletes will always change. I saw the sport change from, equipped to raw. I saw women just recently, fight for, additional weight classes. So the market will always dictate. If I could offer any advice, it's like gravitate towards where the meat directors, they're constantly selling out their meats. People don't continue to go to things that are not good for them. I see that your meats sell out quickly, and they have been. Even amateur pro day, they just fill up quickly, So I like to gravitate towards those kinds of meats, I'm even happy to see like Heidi, Heidi Denau, who you just interviewed, hosting such a higher level meet. She has a shorter history in the sport, but her love for it is not dictated by length of time because she's taking on this meet. She loves it. Anybody who's running a higher level meet like this has to love it. There's a lot of work that goes into those big meets, I remember texting you for the Ghost Clash saying, hey, Alex, we're in town early. We always like to get our rack heights early and, avoid the crowds and whatnot. And, and you answered me quickly. And I know at that time you probably received 50 other messages and other things to do, but it never stopped you from, replying to the one. And that matters.
Exactly. There's so many moving parts, right? Besides helping to understand systems, logistics, it's also customer service. It's also experience. You can either choose to leave a lasting impression on people who are going to want to come back and support you and what you have and what you're doing, or you can be a dick and you can run the best meet ever, but you're rude and you're not nice and you're not, respective and responsive to people. And, that just shoots down your longevity, your reputation, and ultimately your product, right, of what you're offering. Yeah. So it really is. It's a full package. It's a full package, and it's not easy.
Yeah, no. And then just understanding our time and our era of it, it's like, I'm so happy to, like I said, still be involved and still played my part, as kind of paying it forward from my coach, from the 70s, 80s, and 90s and paying it forward, and somebody else coming up younger and paying it forward, because powerlifting is lasting because of many people who love it. I've come together to just sustain the sport, for decades. So I'm happy to play my role in it, and however I can help. So hopefully we could get this meet going in, Maui, because, we had a meet scheduled there last year. Unfortunately, the wildfires and the devastation, the island is, still rebuilding themselves. So we hope to bring this meet as, to the island and bring people from all parts of the island to just come and celebrate at that time. So hopefully we can have this meet in November there at the gym for the lifters.
I love it. So, Leo, it's been amazing talking to you. It's been amazing hearing your story. Where can people find out more about meets in Hawaii if they want to travel? Where can they find out about that meet in November? Sign us out.
For the meet in November, you can go to Ho'omana Barbell on Instagram, and everything for the meet will be listed there. And then, of course, the WRPF events website once the meet is registered.
Awesome. Leo, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode. This was absolutely one of my favorites, getting to speak to an absolute legend. And thank you for everything that you've done. And I hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Alex. Bye.